He wasn't running, he wasn't shouting, he wasn't doing anything but walking home from football practice, and somehow, that was enough to make him a suspect. In a town where sidewalks were swept, fences were white, and neighbors exchanged polite waves over rose bushes, Malik Carter had learned how to be invisible. Not out of shame, not out of fear, but out of necessity. Willow Creek was the kind of place where everything looked perfect. Tree-lined streets, two-car garages, the faint scent of lemon and fresh-cut grass lingering in the breeze. But underneath its polished surface lived a quiet truth. Some people didn't have to do anything wrong to be treated like they already had. Malik knew this. His parents had taught him well. So when he heard the low, stuttering chirp of a police cruiser behind him that late September afternoon, he didn't panic. He didn't run. He did what his father always told him to do. Pause. Breathe. Stand tall. Let them see your dignity before they try to take it. He turned slowly. The cruiser rolled to a stop alongside him. Inside sat a man with a sharp buzz cut, a jaw like a concrete block, and mirrored sunglasses that reflected the entire street. Officer Kincaid. New to Willow Creek, but already making himself known in the most predictable ways. Kincaid lowered his window. "Hey kid," he said. "You live around here?" Malik nodded. "Yes, sir. Just heading home from practice." "Practice, huh?" Kincaid's voice was casual, but there was an edge to it, like a knife hidden under a handshake. "What kind?" "Football. At West Hill High." Kincaid tilted his head, studying Malik like a man inspecting a car he didn't trust. "Got any ID on you?" Malik kept his voice steady. "Just my school ID. I'm 16. Let me see it." Malik reached for his duffel bag slowly, deliberately, remembering every word his father had drilled into him since he was 10. Never make sudden moves. Always narrate your actions. Stay calm even when they're trying to make you anything but. He pulled out the card and handed it through the window. Kincaid examined it like it might be fake. "Malik Carter," he read aloud. "Birch Avenue. That over by the lake?" "Yes, sir." Kincaid smirked. "Big houses over there." Malik said nothing. The silence stretched. "What's your dad do?" Kincaid asked, seemingly offhand. Malik didn't flinch. "He works in national security." The effect was immediate. Kincaid leaned back in his seat, then slowly he began to laugh. Not a soft chuckle, not even a surprised laugh, but a loud, mocking cackle that turned heads on the block and echoed across the cul-de-sac. "National security," he repeated, wiping his eyes. "That's a new one. What is he, some kind of secret agent?" Malik didn't respond. Kincaid wasn't finished. "Let me guess, top secret, works with the president. Disappears for months at a time, right? Meanwhile, your mom works 3 jobs and hopes he sends a postcard." A few neighbors had started peeking through their curtains now. One woman, Malik thought her name was Mrs. Delaney, stood on her porch with a watering can frozen in her hand. Kincaid leaned further out the window. "Come on, kid. Tell the truth. What does your dad really do?" Malik looked him square in the eyes. Not angry, not scared. Just still. "He works in national security," he said again, quietly but clearly. Kincaid's smirk vanished for a beat, just long enough to reveal the flicker of something else. Something unsettled. But it returned quickly, louder than before. "You kids," he muttered, "always got some kind of fantasy going." Another cruiser pulled up. Kincaid waved the officer over. "This one says his dad's with the government," Kincaid called, laughing. "Maybe he's got dinner with the president tonight." The other officer gave a weak smile, glancing around at the gathering neighbors. Across the street, partially hidden behind a tree, a girl Malik recognized from school, Zoe Bradley, held up her phone, recording. Her eyes were narrowed, focused. Malik saw her, and he understood. This wasn't just about him anymore. It never had been. The front door clicked shut behind him with the soft finality of a vault ceiling. For a moment, Malik Carter stood still in the foyer, his backpack sliding from his shoulder onto the tile floor with a quiet thud. The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was comforting, familiar, safe. But today, even the safety felt thinner. A faint scent of jasmine drifted from the living room candles, mixing with the citrus of furniture polish. Somewhere upstairs, the hum of the dryer buzzed. And in the kitchen, standing in slacks and a cream blouse still half-tucked from her hospital shift, was Malik Carter. She was slicing pears, not for a meal, just something she did when she was thinking, or when the day had left a weight on her chest too heavy to name. A small plate of pale slices already sat on the counter, arranged like petals in a pattern. She didn't look up right away. "Hey baby," she said, her voice smooth, unhurried. "How was practice?" Malik didn't answer immediately. He stepped into the kitchen, the soles of his sneakers whispering against the tile. He took one of the slices from the plate and bit into it. "Fine," he said. Monique turned. She had the kind of gaze that cut through deflection like sunlight through glass. Quiet, sharp, unblinking. "What happened?" she asked. It wasn't a question, it was a diagnosis. Malik hesitated. The bite of pear lingered in his mouth, crisp and sweet and suddenly hard to swallow. "I got stopped," he said finally, "by a cop." The knife paused mid-air. "Where?" she asked, calm but suddenly still. "Just off Birch. He followed me from the high school, said I looked out of place." Malik didn't add that Officer Kincaid had laughed in his face or that his voice had carried loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Monique exhaled slowly, then resumed slicing. "Did he search you?" "No, just asked questions about where I lived, what my dad did." Monique's hand stopped again. "What did you tell him?" Malik met her eyes. "That he works in national security." A long silence passed between them. Her next move was subtle, a simple placing of the knife on the counter, blade facing away. But Malik saw the shift, the way her shoulders straightened, the almost imperceptible tension in her fingers. "We've talked about this," she said. "I know, Mom, I know, but he was saying things about you, about Dad, about how kids like me don't have fathers at home." Her expression softened. She stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the side of Malik's face. "I know it's hard," she said, "being quiet when someone tries to humiliate you, but your father's work is not the kind you explain to strangers." "I didn't go into details," Malik said. "I just didn't want him thinking Dad left us." Monique sighed, pulling him into a brief, tight hug, one he usually would have wriggled out of. Tonight, he didn't. "Listen to me," she said, her voice lower now, quieter. "There are reasons we've kept a low profile. It's not just privacy, it's protection. The less people know, the safer we all are. If anyone asks again, you say your father works in logistics, government consulting, nothing more. Understood?" Malik nodded, but somewhere deep inside, a question lingered. One he hadn't asked since he was a child. If Dad's work is so important, so dangerous, why is he never in any pictures? The family photo wall in the living room held moments from all stages of his life. Toddler birthday parties, beach vacations, school awards. But in each one, Jonathan Carter was a presence behind the camera, not in front of it. The man who taught Malik how to tie knots in the backyard, how to fight without fists, how to see without being seen, but never once in uniform, never in anything that might give away who he truly was. That night, as rain began to mist against the kitchen windows, Monique sat in the den with her laptop open but unread. Her thoughts weren't on the hospital's email chain. They were on the officer's name, Kincaid, and what he might already be saying around town. So she did what Malik didn't see, what he would never know unless it became necessary. She opened the locked drawer in the hallway desk and took out a secure phone, matte black and untraceable. No apps, no contacts. Just one hard-coded number. She typed a short message. Contact initiated by local LE. Protocol review recommended. The response came less than 30 seconds later. Received. Status observing. Monique placed the phone back in the drawer and locked it with shaking fingers. Because when a man like Jonathan Carter had to disappear to keep the country safe, the only way to protect the family he left behind was to be ready when the silence broke. The next morning, the streets of Willow Creek glistened under a sheen of dew, the air crisp with early autumn. Lawns were perfectly edged, flags fluttered politely from porches, and children in neat uniforms waited for buses with backpacks bigger than their torsos. It all looked normal. But not to Officer Kincaid. He sat in his squad car parked just a block from the Carter residence, eyes fixed on the modest two-story home at the end of the cul-de-sac. Nothing about the house screamed importance. No flashy car in the driveway, no security gate, no signs of anything unusual. But it was what he couldn't see that disturbed him. The kid, Malik, hadn't flinched, hadn't bluffed, hadn't stuttered. "My dad works in national security." Kincaid had laughed it off in front of his colleague, but the boy's calm unnerved him. The lack of fear, the poise. It didn't match the profile. It didn't fit his assumptions. And when things didn't fit, Kincaid didn't let them go. His police laptop sat open on the passenger seat. A quick database check the night before had shown the usual. Malik's school records were spotless. No priors, no red flags, just a quiet, well-behaved student. His mother, Malik Carter, had a verifiable record. Registered nurse, now in hospital administration. No criminal history, no unusual affiliations. But Jonathan Carter? That's where things got strange. The man existed. Barely. Marriage license. Mortgage co-signed. Name listed on Malik's birth certificate. But beyond that, nothing. No employment listed. No social media. No tax records filed locally. It was like he lived in the negative space of their lives. Present in theory, but invisible in practice. Kincaid didn't like mysteries. Not ones he couldn't control. Especially not ones that made him feel small. He clicked deeper into restricted law enforcement databases, requesting military records under the pretense of a background verification. But the screen returned something unexpected. Access denied. Classified clearance required. He blinked. Not no record found. Not invalid request. But classified. He tried again, using a workaround he'd learned from a former army buddy. A thin, shaky line of access granted through gray areas and forgotten passwords. Again, the same message. Kincaid leaned back in his seat, heart now beating with something new, unease. He wasn't dealing with just a lie from a cocky teenager. He was staring at the edge of something bigger. And suddenly, he didn't feel like the one in control. Still, he couldn't let it go. That afternoon, he parked a few houses down from the Carter's home and began canvassing the neighborhood in plain clothes. His badge clipped to his belt, visible but casual. He approached residents with a practiced smile and questions disguised as conversation. "Hey there," he said to a woman tending roses in her front yard. "Officer Kincaid, new to the area, just getting to know folks." She smiled politely. "Martha Jenkins, 30 years in this neighborhood. You must know just about everyone then," he said. "What can you tell me about the family at 214 Birch? The Carters?" Her pruning shears paused. "Oh, Monique's a gem," she said. "Works at the hospital. That boy Malik is polite, offers to shovel my walk every winter without asking." Kincaid nodded. "What about the father? Jonathan?" Martha's eyes narrowed, just slightly. "Don't see him much. He's away a lot. Work, I think. Something in the government. Monique never talks about it. Very private family." Kincaid's lips twitched. "Ever get a sense of what kind of work?" "No," she said. "Just know when he's home he keeps to himself. But he fixed my porch steps last spring without me even asking." As the sun dipped below the rooftops, Officer Kincaid returned to his patrol car with less than he wanted, but more than he expected. No one knew exactly what Jonathan Carter did. Everyone respected the Carters, but from a distance. A well-liked, quiet family with invisible edges, and that made them a threat. Or at least, in Kincaid's mind, a puzzle worth solving. He pulled out his personal phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in months. "Yeah, it's me," he said when the line picked up. "You still got that guy who can access restricted files?" There was a pause on the other end. "This about a suspect?" Kincaid looked back toward the Carter home, where the porch light flicked on automatically. Something like that, he said. Just need to know who I'm dealing with. Because the boy had looked him in the eye and said something Officer Kincaid didn't like. My dad works in national security. And the more he dug, the more it felt like the kid wasn't lying. He was warning him. Zoe Bradley had always been a quiet observer. While other students posted videos of cafeteria fights or viral dance trends, Zoe was the kind of girl who noticed which teachers skipped over Malik's raised hand, or how the resource officer only ever wandered into the hallways where the black students hung out. She didn't film everything, but when she did, it meant something. And when she saw Officer Kincaid pull Malik aside and laugh in his face, she didn't just record it. She studied it. That night, seated cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by mismatched pillows and the glow of a second-hand laptop, Zoe played the video back frame by frame. She muted the laughter, paused on Malik's face, not because she wanted to capture pain, but because she recognized something there. A calm refusal to flinch, a dignity not taught in textbooks, a strength that came from knowing more than he said. She watched the video 4 times. Then she opened a secure folder on her computer and dropped it in. For now, she wouldn't post it. Not yet. But she would dig. Zoe's father, Marcus Bradley, was a civil rights attorney and had spent the past 2 decades working lawsuits that never made the evening news. Cases involving housing discrimination, police misconduct, school zoning bias. At dinner, he talked in riddles. In his office, he kept locked drawers full of redacted documents and legal settlements, signed under threat of silence. He never discouraged Zoe's curiosity, but he always added the same phrase when she got too close to something volatile. Be careful what truths you chase. Some aren't buried, they're armored. That night, Zoe chased anyway. She didn't start with Jonathan Carter. She started with the concept, national security. She searched forums for military operations that left no paper trails. She lurked in threads where ex-Marines hinted at units that didn't technically exist. She searched for anything tied to Willow Creek, to quiet operatives, to any mention of the name Carter. Most threads were rabbit holes, conspiracies, the usual noise. But then she found it, a name buried in a redacted mission log from a years-old intelligence leak. Field Command J. Carter. Extraction Protocol. 0 civilian exposure. It was the only full name in the report, and even that line was surrounded by black bars. She screenshot it. Cross-checked the timeline. It matched Malik's 8th birthday, the year his father had missed the party because of an overseas conference. Zoe leaned back from her keyboard, the air in her room suddenly thinner. The next morning, she caught Malik between classes, near the back hallway by the band room, quiet, out of the way. Hey, she said. I need to talk to you. He raised an eyebrow. They weren't close. Acquaintances at best. With that cop, she continued, the one who stopped you. I recorded it. Malik's eyes flickered with surprise, but he stayed still. Why? He asked. Because it wasn't right, she said plainly. And my dad says always document. He gave a slow nod. Are you planning to post it? Only if you want me to, she replied. But, was it true what you said about your dad? He could have denied it, made a joke, shrugged it off. Instead, he just looked at her and said, yes. She nodded. That's all I wanted to know. She turned to leave, then hesitated. There's something weird going on, she added. About your dad. Online. His name's in things it shouldn't be. Malik didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. You should be careful, she said. That cop's digging. He's not gonna let this go. Across town, Officer Kincaid sat alone in his living room, a half-empty glass of bourbon in one hand and his police-issued laptop open in front of him. He stared at the screen. Another, access denied. But he wasn't finished. He'd called in a favor, an old contact who now worked IT for a private military contractor. The kind of guy who still owed Kincaid from their academy days and didn't ask too many questions. When the return message came, it wasn't what he expected. You didn't hear this from me. That name is flagged. High clearance. Top tier. Active operative. Whatever you're doing, walk away. You're not equipped to poke this. Kincaid stared at the text, jaw tight. His pride itched like a rash he couldn't reach. Active operative. Why live here? In this town? With no protection? His paranoia began to twist. Unless he wasn't just protecting his family. Unless he was using them as cover. The bourbon glass cracked slightly in his grip. He didn't know it yet, but the more he chased ghosts, the more he was being watched himself. He didn't come through the front door. He never did. Instead, Jonathan Carter stepped silently from the shadows of the detached garage at 3:04 a.m., a ghost returning not from war, but from something heavier, something classified, blurred in paperwork and memory. The security system recognized his biometric signature before his hand touched the keypad. The locks disengaged without a sound. Motion sensors lit the hallway faintly, just enough for his eyes to scan for tampering. There was none. Good. The house was still safe, for now. Inside, the air smelled of lemon oil and night rain. A jasmine candle burned low in the kitchen, long forgotten. Jonathan reached for it and gently snuffed the flame between two fingers. From the hallway, Monique's voice, calm but firm. "You're early." He turned. She stood with a robe wrapped around her, one arm folded across her chest, the other holding a phone, the secure one. Her hair was down. Her eyes, as always, missed nothing. "Had to accelerate the timeline," he said simply. "There's a problem here." Monique gave a small, tired laugh. "We've got a few." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "I've been briefed." Briefed. That was how he referred to a week's worth of intercepted messages, local news alerts, police scans, and a text from Monique that said simply, "He's asking too many questions." Jonathan had watched the body camera footage, reviewed Zoe's video, read Officer Kincaid's inquiry trail through sealed networks he wasn't supposed to access. What he saw wasn't a threat yet, but it was becoming one. Upstairs, Malik slept soundly, one arm flung over his face, the quiet rhythm of his breath steady and unaware. Jonathan stood in the doorway, watching him for a moment that lingered just a little too long. The last time he'd seen his son in person, Malik had still been shorter than him. Now, he was nearly eye level. The quiet weight in his posture wasn't just maturity, it was learned restraint. The kind only someone with something to protect develops. He's becoming a man, Jonathan thought, and he's already carrying the burden of silence. He would have to talk to him. Not now, but soon. Before things escalated. Because they would escalate. The next morning, Malik came downstairs to find his father seated at the kitchen table, reading a plain manila folder. He froze in the doorway, stunned. "Dad?" Jonathan looked up. A warm, brief smile touched his lips. "Hey, son. You're home." Jonathan nodded. "Early." Malik stepped into the room cautiously, as if afraid the moment might dissolve. "Mom didn't say." "She didn't know until I was 20 minutes out," Jonathan said. "Protocol." Malik sat down, his eyes flicked to the folder. "What's that?" Jonathan closed it gently. "Something we'll talk about soon." A pause stretched between them. Then Malik said, "You know about the cop." "I do. I told him what you did. I didn't mean to." He kept pushing. "You did fine," Jonathan said. "You kept your head. That's what matters." Another beat of silence. "He laughed," Malik said barely above a whisper, like it was ridiculous. Jonathan's gaze didn't harden, it didn't need to. His quiet intensity filled the room. "Most people laugh at what they don't understand," he said, "until it's too late." That day, the Carter house changed. Locks were reinforced, security systems calibrated. A new perimeter sensor was installed in the backyard, disguised inside a birdhouse. Monique watched it all unfold with professional precision, falling into step without needing instruction. She always had. There were no raised voices, no panic, only preparation. Because once Jonathan Carter came home, it meant something had shifted. Not just for their family, but for anyone watching too closely. Across town, Officer Kincaid sat in his car outside the police precinct, scrolling through surveillance photos he'd taken the day before. He didn't know what he was looking for anymore, just proof that he wasn't wrong, that there was something. He kept returning to the photo of the box he'd found in the Carter's shed, tucked behind pots, filled with obscure currencies, a coded journal, and a photograph. 4 men in desert fatigues, faces partially shadowed. But one of them, the one on the far right, his face was sharp, clear-eyed, watchful. Jonathan Carter, the man who wasn't supposed to exist. Kincaid leaned forward, zooming in on the image, trying to see something, anything, that would break the illusion. Prove the man was a fraud, a criminal, a threat. But the harder he looked, the more convinced he became that Jonathan Carter was none of those things. He was something worse. He was real, and that terrified him. The house was quiet, too quiet. Officer Kincaid crouched low behind a trimmed hedge at the side of the Carter property, dressed in plain clothes, but armed with a small flashlight, gloves, and a tension that gripped his spine like cold wire. It was past midnight. The streets of Willow Creek slept under a pale sky. Porch lights flickered on empty lawns. The occasional dog barked somewhere down the block. But here, only silence. He had parked his unmarked Dodge Charger 2 streets away and made the approach on foot. No patrol car, no body cam, no partner. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was personal. He had tried everything. The databases, the contacts, even that private military friend who had finally replied with a warning. Walk away. This one's above you. But Kincaid didn't walk away. He couldn't. Because something about Jonathan Carter scratched at his pride. It made him feel small in a way he didn't understand. A man like that, quiet, respected, untouchable. It went against everything Kincaid believed he controlled. So now, as he eased open the Carter family side gate, he believed he was about to uncover something. A safe with government files, a weapons stash, a hidden radio transmitter. Anything to prove the boy was lying. Or worse, telling the truth. The backyard was pristine, the grass trimmed into perfect edges. A small shed stood near the fence, its doors locked tight. Kincaid walked with the practiced rhythm of someone who believed he had the advantage. He didn't realize the cameras had already picked him up 5 steps ago. Inside a dark room 2 blocks away in a property owned under a shell company with no name on the mailbox, Jonathan Carter watched the live feed on a small monitor. His expression was unreadable. His fingers hovered over a keyboard but did not type. Predictable, he murmured. Beside him, a figure in civilian clothes leaned forward. You want me to intercept? Jonathan shook his head. Not yet. They watched as Kincaid approached the shed, produced a small flat tool from his back pocket and began to pick the lock. It gave way faster than expected. Kincaid stepped inside. The shed wasn't much, just garden tools, a lawnmower, bags of soil. But in the back corner, behind stacked terracotta pots, was what he'd come for, the metal box. He pulled it down and stared at it for a long moment. It was heavier than it looked. Secured by a simple padlock, Kincaid hesitated. He could break it. But breaking it meant committing to something bigger than trespassing. Breaking it meant felony charges if caught. And he wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Instead, he pulled out his phone and began taking photos, from every angle. The contents, the notebook, the foreign currency. And then, he noticed the lid wasn't locked. The padlock hung through the latch but wasn't snapped shut. His curiosity eclipsed his caution. He opened it. Inside were several folded documents, a notebook filled with symbols and shorthand he didn't recognize, and one photograph. He pulled it out. It showed 4 men standing in the desert, dust caking their uniforms, shadows blurring their eyes. But one face was unmistakably clear. Jonathan Carter. Expression calm, eyes piercing. Kincaid stared at the photo like it might burst into flame. He felt it for the first time, not just suspicion, but fear. This wasn't a delusion. This wasn't overreaction. This man wasn't hiding a secret. He was the secret. Back in his apartment, an hour later, Kincaid uploaded the photos to a secure flash drive. He planned to show them to someone, leak them, Proved to the department he wasn't crazy. He wasn't being paranoid. He was right. But as he reached to unplug the drive, his laptop shut off. He blinked. The lights flickered once, then came back on. His laptop didn't. The screen stayed black. A single message popped up on his second monitor. Stop. Then it vanished. Kincaid stared in disbelief. No logo, no trace, not even in the browser history. He stood, suddenly aware of the quiet hum of his refrigerator, the faint buzz of the streetlight outside. Every sound now felt like a warning. He crossed to the window. Across the street, a black SUV idled with its lights off. When he looked again, it was gone. 2 miles away, Jonathan stood in the darkened operations room, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen. He found the box, the observer beside him said. He was supposed to. You left the lock open? Jonathan nodded. He needed to see just enough to be afraid, enough to back off. And if he doesn't? Jonathan's voice was quiet, but final. Then we end this. The next day unfolded like any other in Willow Creek, on the surface. The mail arrived on time. Sprinklers rotated lazily across the lawns. School buses made their loops through the quiet neighborhood. Life, as always, appeared peaceful. But in the shadows, something had shifted. Because Officer Kincaid, suspended, stripped of patrol access and warned by his own department to stand down, had decided he wouldn't wait for the system. He would force the truth, by any means necessary. Malik Carter didn't know any of this as he walked home from football practice that afternoon. His bag bounced lightly against his back. His shoulders were sore, but his mind was clear. His father was home. That meant something. A weight off his chest. A strange comfort, like knowing a fire extinguisher is within reach even if the building isn't burning yet. But as he neared the last block before his house, something about the silence struck him. Too quiet. No dogs barking, no kids on bikes, no passing cars, just silence. And then, rubber soles on asphalt behind him, quick, quiet, deliberate. Malik turned, and that's when the world shifted. Kincaid, dressed in civilian clothes, surged forward and grabbed him hard by the arm. "Hey!" Malik shouted, instinctively pulling back. "What are you?" "You're coming with me," Kincaid snapped, his voice low and sharp. "Now." Malik struggled. "Let go. You're not even on duty." That only made Kincaid more erratic. "You think I care about that?" he hissed. "Your father's a threat. He's been using this neighborhood, using all of you as cover, and I'm gonna prove it." From the bushes across the street, a small movement flickered. Zoe Bradley, phone in hand, already filming, already live. Kincaid shoved Malik into the back seat of a nondescript sedan. No lights, no badges. He didn't notice the camera feed, or the dozens of viewers joining Zoe's stream by the second. He didn't know the footage was already being passed between classmates, parents, even local journalists. He didn't see the storm he had just summoned. Inside the Carter home, Jonathan stood at the kitchen counter. A knife paused mid-chop over a head of broccoli. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It was a code-red ping from Zoe's livestream, encrypted through a secure app Malik had quietly been instructed to install months ago. A failsafe. He pressed play. The footage was live. Malik, taken, shoved into a car. Kincaid's voice loud and unhinged. "You think your father's a hero? He's not. He's a liar, and I'm gonna show the world what he's hiding." Jonathan set down the knife and walked, calm, steady, into the den. "Activate the tracker," he said. Monique looked up, instantly alert. "The one in Malik's watch?" "Yes." Within minutes, Jonathan's custom GPS grid glowed with a pulsing red dot. Abandoned train depot, 3 miles outside town. Not a police facility. Not a sanctioned location. This wasn't an arrest. This was a kidnapping. Monique stood, trembling but composed. "You're not calling the police?" "No," Jonathan said. "They'll follow once it starts, but I'm not waiting." She didn't argue. Meanwhile, at the Willow Creek Police Department, chaos was erupting. Parents had begun flooding the switchboard. The mayor's office was demanding answers. And in the chief's inbox sat a forwarded video from Zoe's stream with one line of text. A suspended officer just kidnapped a minor. On camera. In your town. Chief Holloway froze when he watched the footage. Then he stood and grabbed his radio. All units, locate Officer Bradley Kincaid. Do not approach. Do not engage. Notify me immediately if he's spotted. And find Jonathan Carter. Now. At the train depot, Malik sat zip-tied to a metal chair beneath a flickering light. He didn't scream. Didn't beg. He watched. He remembered. His father's voice rang clear in his mind. If you're ever taken, don't try to outfight them. Outlast them. Outthink them. Let them underestimate you. Kincaid paced back and forth like a man unraveling. You know what your father is? He barked. He's a ghost. He's not even supposed to be real. But I found him. And once I make this public, once I show them what he's done, he'll be exposed. Malik's voice was low, calm. You don't know what you've started. Kincaid laughed. I know exactly what I've started. From the far end of the depot, a door creaked open. Footsteps echoed. And then, stepping into the half-light, stood Jonathan Carter. He wasn't dressed like a soldier. No combat vest, no tactical boots, just jeans, a fitted jacket, and eyes like cold steel. Malik blinked. Once, Kincaid spun around. You, Jonathan didn't flinch. You're under arrest, Kincaid barked, raising his gun. Don't move. Jonathan kept walking. Stop. Still, he walked. I swear I'll shoot. Jonathan stopped 5 feet away. No, you won't. Kincaid's hands shook. Jonathan raised his own, palms open. If I wanted you gone, he said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And for the first time since it began, Kincaid felt it, the fear. The moment hung still. 3 lives, frozen in time beneath a broken depot ceiling. Jonathan Carter stood 5 feet from Officer Kincaid, hands raised, posture relaxed, yet every fiber of him radiated precision, restraint, and readiness, like a man who didn't need to show force to command it. Behind Kincaid, Malik sat zip-tied to a chair, watching with quiet faith. His father was here. That meant this was over. Almost. You take one more step, I swear I'll... Kincaid's threat trembled as he aimed his gun squarely at Jonathan's chest. Jonathan didn't blink. Think very carefully, officer, he said. You're being recorded. You're out of uniform. You've abducted a minor, and you're about to turn a mistake into something irreversible. You're bluffing, Kincaid spat. You've been bluffing this whole time. No one knows you're here. Jonathan tilted his head slightly. No one? He echoed. A moment later, the warehouse's side entrance creaked open. Heavy boots stepped inside, 2 men in dark tactical gear. No insignias, no rank. Their movements were crisp, coordinated, silent. Their presence was undeniable. Kincaid spun toward them, panic flashing in his eyes. What? What is this? Who are they? Back up, Jonathan said simply. But they're not here for you. One of the men stepped forward, placing a small drone on the ground. It beeped once and began recording, scanning the area, cataloging the weapons, mapping the space. Everything you've done here is now evidence, Jonathan continued. Chain of custody begins the moment this feed hits secure cloud. Kincaid's hands began to shake. You think you can intimidate me with theatrics? He growled. You're just some deep cover operative using your kid as a shield. Jonathan's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something colder. You didn't take Malik because you wanted justice, he said. You took him because you needed someone weaker than you to control. Someone to scare, to make yourself feel strong again. He took 1 step closer. Kincaid raised the gun higher. Jonathan didn't flinch. You're not a guardian of truth, he said. You're a man who couldn't handle being ignored. So you created a threat. Shut up, Kincaid snapped. Jonathan's voice didn't rise. You call it an investigation, I call it obsession. An obsession without clarity? That's just madness in uniform. Kincaid lunged forward. The gun swung wide, angling toward Malik. Time slowed. But Jonathan was already moving. In a single precise motion, he deflected the weapon with the side of his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Kincaid threw a punch, wild, desperate. Jonathan didn't block it, he let it come. At the last possible second, he sidestepped and turned Kincaid's momentum against him, twisting his arm, flipping him to the concrete floor with a soft surgical thud. It wasn't violence, it was control. It was a reminder. Jonathan knelt beside him, his voice barely above a whisper. This could have gone differently, but you chose force. You chose fear. And now the very system you claim to defend will judge you. Kincaid groaned, stunned, breathless, and defeated. From behind, the two operatives moved forward and began zip-tying him. Jonathan turned to his son. Malik was still sitting quietly, face unreadable. You okay? Jonathan asked. Malik nodded. Yeah, I knew you'd come. Jonathan moved to cut the plastic restraints from his wrists. I'm sorry I brought him into this, Malik said softly. You didn't, Jonathan replied. He was already spiraling. You just gave him something to blame. Minutes later, local police sirens lit up the night sky. By the time they arrived, the tactical team had vanished. All that remained was Officer Kincaid, handcuffed and hysterical, shouting about secrets and ghosts, and Jonathan Carter, calmly giving his formal statement to Chief Holloway under the flicker of red and blue light. And Malik, standing quietly by his father's side. For 3 days, Willow Creek held its breath. The footage from Zoe Bradley's live stream, viewed more than 2.7 million times, had turned a quiet suburb into a national headline. News vans parked outside the police station. Commentators argued on every channel. Suspended officer kidnaps teenager, claims father is a spy. Suburban ghost, who is Jonathan Carter? Hero or hoax? Secrets in the shadows of Willow Creek. But those who knew, those who had seen the warehouse footage, the aftermath, the quiet way Jonathan diffused chaos without raising his voice, didn't ask those questions. They knew the truth already. At Willow Creek Town Hall, every seat was filled. Parents, students, business owners, retirees, black, white, Latino, Asian, all packed shoulder to shoulder beneath the domed ceiling as Mayor Regina Hale stepped to the podium. Thank you all for coming, she said. As you know, recent events have shaken our community, but they have also opened our eyes. She turned toward the man seated just behind her. He stood. No uniform, no medals, just Jonathan Carter, in a crisp button-down slacks and the calm gravity of a man who didn't need validation to own a room. When he reached the podium, the crowd fell into a hush so complete it rang in the ears. I didn't come here to speak today, Jonathan began. I don't seek attention, I never have. But sometimes silence protects the wrong people. A ripple moved through the room. What happened to my son wasn't unique. It was just captured, broadcast, seen. He scanned the room, not challenging, but clear. There are young men across this country who don't get that chance. They get assumptions, they get handcuffs, they get headlines, but not justice. Murmurs of agreement, heads nodding, eyes welling. But I'm not here to assign blame, he continued. I'm here because this town, our town, has the chance to be better. He paused. Not perfect, just better. He spoke not as a soldier, but as a father. Not as a shadow operative, but as a man who had spent years protecting a country that often forgot to protect its own. He didn't rage, he didn't demand. He offered something harder, grace. By the time he stepped down, even those who had once whispered behind curtains now rose to their feet. The applause was not thunderous. It was steady, like the beating of a collective heart, just rediscovering its rhythm. In the weeks that followed, Officer Kincaid was charged with multiple felonies, including unlawful restraint, impersonating an officer, and abuse of power. Chief Holloway issued a public apology, and Willow Creek's police department implemented new oversight protocols, including youth community liaisons. Zoe Bradley was offered a scholarship for young investigative journalists. Malik Carter, once watched with suspicion, was now sought out by classmates who had never spoken to him before. Not because he was a hero, but because he never stopped being human. And Jonathan? He turned down relocation. He turned down federal offers. He chose something no one expected. He opened a small training center, the Carter Academy for Leadership and Resilience, just 4 blocks from Town Hall. No advertisements, no online presence, Just a small sign that read, "For the quiet ones, for the underestimated." Enrollment tripled in the first month. It rained the day Malik spoke at his school's graduation ceremony. Not a heavy storm, just a soft, steady drizzle. Enough to blur reflections on the sidewalk. Enough to make you slow down and notice the world. The gym was packed with folding chairs and damp umbrellas. Faculty fanned themselves with programs. Parents sat nervously, phones ready. And in the front row, wearing a dark blue suit and no tie, Jonathan Carter watched his son take the stage. Malik didn't clear his throat or shuffle his note cards. He just stood there for a moment, letting the silence breathe. Then he said, "When I was younger, I used to think strength was loud. That power meant yelling the right thing at the right time, or fighting to prove a point." He looked toward the back of the room, where Zoe Bradley filmed quietly with a steady hand. But then life showed me something different. I watched a man I love stand in a storm and never raise his voice. I watched him protect people without needing them to know. A pause. The room leaned in. And I learned that real strength is quiet. It's steady. It's choosing dignity even when no one else is giving it to you. My father once told me, in a room full of wolves, be the quiet storm. That's what I hope we all take with us today. Silence, then applause, gentle at first, then rising, like a wave crashing not with volume, but with meaning. That night, the Carter family sat at the dinner table, just the three of them. Malik, Monique, Jonathan, no cameras, no crowds, no noise, just warmth, candlelight, laughter. Jonathan reached across the table and placed a small envelope in front of Malik. Inside was a single photo, not of soldiers, not of operations, but of Malik, age 8, standing in the backyard, a piece of rope in his hands, learning to tie knots, a memory Malik had nearly forgotten. On the back, in Jonathan's handwriting, was a single line. Some skills you show the world. Others you carry quietly, until the moment they're needed. Across town, Kincaid sat in a state facility, staring blankly out a rain-fogged window. The television in the common room was muted, but his eyes locked on the screen anyway. It showed Malik, standing on a stage. Next to him stood Jonathan, just behind the curtain, watching, waiting, protecting. Even now, back in Willow Creek, neighbors began waving more often. People asked questions, not out of suspicion but curiosity. Conversations were longer, judgments slower. Change didn't come like thunder. It came like Malik had said it would. Quiet, steady, human. And somewhere deep in the network of protected servers, a secure line blinked softly with a final message from an anonymous Pentagon account. Asset remains in place. Community stable. Observation to continue, unobtrusively. Ghost returned to ground. Mission successful. But this story wasn't just about them. It's about us. It's about what we assume when we see someone walking down our street. It's about what we choose to believe about strength, about silence, about sacrifice. And most of all, it's about the moment when a father becomes a shield and a son becomes a light. So the question isn't who Jonathan Carter really was. It's who you'll choose to be the next time someone asks for dignity instead of doubt. Would you have believed him?